Hi, guys. Welcome back. Happy Saturday. I want to say some of the most important conversations that we're having right now are not necessarily happening on the news. They are happening in rooms that they don't want you in. So I just went to Atlanta, Georgia, and there was a screening that TPUSA Rise did. It's called Race Wars. It's a 4-part docuseries, and I believe we're in part 2. And this docuseries basically stood out because what it was doing was breaking down the minority belief and being fed a false narrative about what is really going on in our government, our schools, our communities, our neighborhoods. And the film argues that many people have been taught to blame white Americans as the main reasons they cannot get ahead, while ignoring the deeper ideological roots and forces at work. It also shows how Marxist ideas have been introduced into minority communities in a way that exploits pain, division, and grievance in order to push a broader political agenda. I highly encourage you to see this docuseries. It will be streamed on Rumble if you're not able to see it in person. They're going to be going all over the country to show this docuseries. I believe the next place is going to be in Ohio. But if you go to TPUSA Rise, I would put in TPUSA Rise Race Wars right after that into Google, and it'll pull it right up, and you can find where it's happening near you and participate in it. The event is free. And the event I went to, they were expecting, I actually volunteered there at the event, met some really good people. They had an expectation of about 90 people, but I can tell you that I know we were over that amount because my husband and I had to give up our seat. We volunteered to give up our seat because people were standing up and they didn't have seats. So we gave ours. But the event was very powerful. We had, even though again it was geared towards minority, you saw people from all over. Like there were white Americans, Black Americans, there were Hispanics inside of that theater to see this film. And I believe it was very eye-opening. Marcus Wada was the guy who directed it, as well as Pierre Wilson, who is the director of TPUSA Rise. He was also part of this film. And then you also have Stephen Davis, who's the guy inside the film who is conducting these interviews and kind of pushing back on this idea as he talks to people on the street in the docuseries about what they think is holding them back or what's happening in their communities. And it's really sad when you hear some of their perspectives of the things that they've been taught from youth or from being a child and growing up that they still haven't come out of yet. So you can see that there's still a product of their environment and they're growing up like that. And so then they look at the person who they have never met, another, for example, white American, and blame them for the reasons that they're in the positions they're in. And I think that this film is very telling because you are going to get people that are Black men and women who are very educated. There's a theologian. His name is Vince Ellison is in this as well in this docuseries. There's another theologian. I forgot his name. I'm gonna look him up, but Virgil Walker. He's another one, a very well articulate man. He is awesome. They're men of God on this stage, and they were very, just wanting to do this film because they were wanting to bring liberation in the mindset and just challenge it by just asking simple questions and putting forth their findings of how these people can come out of this like burden, or not even burden, this mindset that just keeps them captive and strong, and just like, and I'm using Christian lingo, but it's like a stronghold on their mind because literally the way they think is what's keeping them down. So they're breaking that by saying, no, if that's the case, if you're struggling, you're blaming your struggle, excuse me, on white Americans, then how can we have Africans come to this country and people from different places come to this country and do better than you? So it's not necessarily that. It's the mindset issue. It's the fact that you think this, and so the Bible says, as a man thinketh, so he will be, right? And they start challenging this thing and start looking into Marxist ideology and how that has infiltrated their communities. And some people don't even see it as Marxist. They just see it as, this is what we believe, this is what we think. But it's like, do you even know where that came from? And so they break that down in the film. And I think they do it in such an honoring and strategic way. And they talk about the Bible And the one thing that I love is that Virgil Walker and Vince Ellison, they are unapologetic about their faith in God, especially Vince Ellison. He's unapologetic about just his stance and his pushback. They're very distinct in their approach, but they, nonetheless, they bring truth, and I love that. Vince Ellison, I believe we're going to show a video later of that, but I want to show you guys some photos of that event. So that's my husband and I at the event. We both volunteered, and it was really awesome to work together. I love serving with him. This is That Opinionated Girl. She is another commentator, conservative commentator. The funny thing is, guys, I saw her and I was like, you look like this girl I've seen on TikTok. And she was like, it's me. I was like, no, no, no. But there's a girl on TikTok. She's like, no, 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 it's me. It's really me. And she pulls up her phone. I'm like, oh my God. So it was hilarious. This is Stephen Davis. He's the man that is in the actual docuseries conducting all the interviews. And this is Vince Ellison, who will be joining me soon on the podcast. So it's going to be awesome to have him on. But this was amazing. This is Paul Nix Jr., my regional lead for TPUSA Rise, the guy behind the scenes helping me with all of my events. But yeah, this was really awesome. It's been a busy week for my husband and I, as we have events today for TPUSA Rise. Right before this podcast, we also have events tomorrow for church, so that we're helping lead. So it's busy. But these were all great. I do want to show you guys just a quick video before we segue into what's happening in Iran. Just so you get a little bit of a snippet of what I was able to witness there, because at the end of that docuseries, they did a panel and they allow people to come up and ask questions, which I thought was awesome. So I'm going to allow you to watch a portion of this from Vince Ellison, and then I will give you a little bit more of a synopsis from another participant that asked a question, because I thought his question and like him coming for the first time to see this docuseries, what he asked and what he explained, I guess the statements he made as well was pretty eye-opening as well. So go ahead and take a look at this video.
But our culture has always been Christianity. It's been hard work. It's been thrift. It's been what my father was, what Virgil's father was. While they worked and they provided for their families, how they had good names in their communities. My father was orphaned at 6 months old, grew up in the Jim Crow South, sharecropper. Go back to Brownsville, Tennessee right now, everybody loves my father. He has the high school that he graduated from is named after him now. And he goes by this concept in Genesis, when God asked Cain, Cain, why are you angry? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you don't do well, sin waits at the door to master you. You must master it. If you do well, will you not be accepted? And everywhere you find a black person or a white person, whomever that decides to do well, they're celebrated. And if they don't do well, sin waits at the door to master them. And that's why they master them BML punks, because they don't do well, and sin has mastered them. And the sin of victimization, the sin of slavery, the sin of saying, I'm less than, is a sin that destroys them all. I don't follow that mantra. So that's why I'm happy that this great man asked me to be in this film.
I love that, because I believe what you can hear him say there is that the Bible backs up a merit-based society, and that was key. And then he talked about basically empowering them to, like, you should be making healthy decisions and choices. Nobody's impeding on you doing that. We live in the best country ever, and he goes into that. And he says he's very blunt when he speaks, and I think the black community can definitely relate, because we're used to that. I guess I can't speak for every single black person, but I know where I'm from, where you're used to that blunt talk. So he gets very blunt and in this in this panel, which is great. And what I wanted to say at the very end of this was that there was a young man, I believe he was about 24, 25 years old, who got up and asked a question. He said that he had just gotten out of prison. And you can tell he was somebody that grew up in the hood, because he had the mannerisms, the talk, the accent, all that. And he said, he grew up in the hood and he came out of it. And when you're in an environment like that, you don't know what to expect, because some people have pushback because they feel victimized. Everybody have different lived experiences. But what this guy said, I thought was beautiful. I wanted to share it with you guys. I think I got this one on video, but it's very long. I want to shorten it for you guys later. So I'll probably air that out later in a reel. But he said that he agreed with everything the panel had said, and he for a long time he blamed other people for the decisions that he made, and he was literally just a product of his environment. He grew up in a rough environment, probably was taught things and saw things he maybe shouldn't have seen, and then end up leading this life where it led him to prison. And then he ended up finding God, and he said, now I know the truth is that I'm living this reality because of my own choices. It's not anyone else's but my own. And he says, and I'm coming up out of that. So I thank you guys so much for being here, for sharing this. And I agree with you. It was so beautiful. And then after he said that, the main guy, Marcus Wada, who was directing everything, he said, we need to connect with you. We want to bring you in because he's already at a place where he understands, like, he had to break this mindset that he's taking accountability. He's not a Christian man. He seems to be getting along more in his walk with God and in his role in society. And Marcus Wilder said, "We got to connect with you, even if TPUSA Rise cannot pay for your hotel and your gas or your travels. I will do so." And it was funny because he made a joke and was like, "I got 6 kids, but I'm gonna make it happen. The Lord's gonna help me." He's, "I'm gonna get you where you need to go because we would love for you to be able to speak and share your story." I thought that was so beautiful. This young man may have a job, just showing up. First time I read a docuseries from TPUSA Rise and sharing his story, and he didn't really even have a question. He just made a statement and said, "I agree with you guys," and it was just really heartfelt. Like, he took a moment to share his story. So you have to have been there to understand. Like I said, I'll share a little bit of that reel with you guys. Everybody, content creators were there trying to get him in the camera, but it was good. So I have to chop up my own footage because people were all in my camera, trying to get this young man because what he was saying was very powerful. So yeah, we got to show more of that. So now let's segue into Iran and what's happening right now, and with our nation and Israel and in Iran. I'm going to bring in a special guest with me, Michael Lauber. He's been with me before on the podcast. You guys have seen him before. Michael, thank you so much for being with me today. How are you?
Oh, just another day in paradise over here. Thank you for having me as always. Happy to be here.
Yes, I love it when you say that. I love it when you said another day in paradise. It's so encouraging. So I want to dive a little bit more into this Iran conflict. So first off, I want to take us to kind of the beginning, right? Because I just want to say this for us to uncover more of what's taking place right now, and then we'll dive into current news. So remember that there were protests taking place like in December, right, where the Iranian people were protesting their government due to the economic, they're not having enough food, all those things, and then we saw mass killings of these protesters, and then you have February 8th, where the president does this amazing speech. He encourages them that we're going to come in, we're going to take over. Now, I bring that up because if we look at the past presidents that didn't do anything, when we look at the geopolitical, like if we didn't step in, that practiced that more isolationist type mentality, it almost showed the world a sense of weakness, especially when you have powers like China, Russia, etc. Right? So then under Biden, we saw the whole Russia-Ukraine thing because of that botch operation that happened in Afghanistan. So we see these leaders, they're leaders of nations, and they're looking at how the United States, how our president plays on the world stage, whether they will intervene and how they do that. And the way they do that either portrays weakness or portrays strength. So when Donald Trump decides that he's going to intervene, at this time, because again, we don't want them to develop any nuclear weapons. We don't want them to, do that again. There are certain goals that we have in Iran that we also want to accomplish, and now they're murdering, people that are protesting them, and it's all over the news. You can read it in AP, Reuters, everywhere. If we didn't step up, you already had China threatening to go into Taiwan, which is a national security issue for us and economic issue for us since we get our semiconductors from Taiwan. And if we showed any weakness, I believe, in that moment, that we weren't going to step in, that this is Iran's problem, etc., I do believe that we would have had some more issues than we're currently experiencing, which is kind of like none, right? Because Donald Trump decided to move when he did. So we have to look at this, in a geopolitical stance, because it's not just about necessarily America and us always like having that freedom. We do play a huge role in the world, and we're connected. And so Donald Trump making that, going into Iran at that time, doing something at that moment did speak volumes. I think things that we couldn't even see or understand when we look at these other world leaders. So with that being said, I think we can dive into now what's taking place. And Mike, if you want to add to any of that, if you have it, even if you have a different perspective, you're more than welcome to chime in here.
No, I think you're pretty much dead on with just about with everything you just said. I'll just add two things real quick. One, yeah, like the rest of the world, they whine about it, but part of it is most other countries, they need us a lot more than we need them, and that's why we can project power around the world. I mean, we can stop trade with just about any country on earth, and it's going to have little to no effect on our daily lives here in America. Unless you really want, like, I don't know, Brazilian coffee or something very specific that you can only get in one place,
Got to be so.
Madagascar vanilla. You know, it's not really going to have an effect that we're going to notice here, but
Yeah.
that could be detrimental to another country, and that's why we can use that to project power and hopefully encourage freedom around the world. The only other thing I'll say with what you said is I think you were pretty much on the money, but I will go when you go back to Obama. I don't think this is. I think this is more nefarious than you put, because you look at what else was going on during his term when he had the Arab Spring springing up, destabilizing. Not just potential adversaries, but even friendly nations around the world. Like, look how much worse Egypt has gotten since we basically stood by and encouraged the destabilization of Mubarak's government there. Again, like, he was, yes, in some ways like a hardline dictator, but they did protect the Christians there. They did protect the tourists. They protected their own people. They had a rule of law that people were forced to live under. And yes, they did target the Islamic Brotherhood and other factors like that were undermining their authority, but they were a largely secular government, pro-Western values, and instead we led them down this path of destruction. Same with a lot of other countries around the Middle East. Obama set up the destabilization that allowed for ISIS and everything else around there. When it comes to Iran, I think it's even worse. He's literally everywhere else. He backs the people. Suddenly, when it comes to Iran, he's nowhere to be found in the green movement. That collapses, leads to tens of thousands of deaths, and then we're sending literal pallets of cash over there, freeing up assets.
Wild.
And again, I think this is because that's what they want. That's what the left wants. This is the red-green axis, as Annie talks about all the time, and that is the red-green axis in motion.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I'm glad you took it all the way back to even Obama when he did that as well, because as we know that money probably went into funding their proxies
Oh
and,
yeah,
development of the nuclear program that they had that we had to destroy. And I think, and what I love about Trump's approach in this, before we dive a little bit more deeper into the nuances, is that he's not agreeing to just like a 20-year piece. Because what I saw from Obama was like, kind of let me just push it down the road outside of my presidency so it makes me look good. And this is why I don't think AOC would not be a good president. She would not be a good president, is because when you saw her answer, when she was at the forum, right? It was more so about saving herself than it is about focusing on the nation. Because you could have just she could have just said like, I'm not prepared to answer that, or I don't want to go into that, hypotheticals. She could have said something along those lines, but instead it was like a botch answer that kind of just try to make herself look good, and then she tried to clean it up later. We want honest leaders. We want leaders that can lead with strength. And what we saw with Obama is he kind of kicked the can down the road with his approach. And what Donald Trump is doing is saying, no, not even after me will you have this nuclear weapon. And I love
yep,
that, because it's like they're setting us up for, even if a Democrat, God forbid, another Democrat president that doesn't necessarily have America's best interests at heart. And I don't know if maybe they think they do, with their policies. It's not. But anyways, I digress.
yeah,
What he's doing right now is literally everything I've seen Trump do is setting us up way past his even presidency. Even when you look at, I'm just going to throw that in there to prove my point, but even when you look at the sovereign wealth fund, we've never done that before. And many nations do have that to set up, to have a little buffer for our nation. That's something that's going to live past Donald Trump.
yeah,
So just the way that he operates and he's thinking, it's literally America first. It's not Trump administration gets America first, and after me, that's it. It's like I'm setting up the next president that takes over me to be able to run with the baton, not fumble. So it's
yeah.
it's very intentional. I love it. I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, I think by and large things are heading in the right direction. Iran and what's going on over there, yeah, I think it's probably been a little bumpier and rockier than the administration would like. And I do think they're seeing, you can't trust these people in Iran, that you can't make deals. They are not going to hold up their end of it. And it pretty much doesn't matter what we do or what we dangle in front of them. And we can't give them the vast majority of what their red lines, what they're asking for, are just unacceptable. We can't allow them to have their nuclear program. We can't allow them to control the Straits of Hormuz. They are not a good steward of their own people, their own country, or the land around them, or their resources. And in all honesty, the Islamic government's just going to have to go. You can't deal with these
Yeah.
people. The people in their country don't want them anymore anyway. I mean, they've burned down thousands and thousands of mosques just during this last uprising. They do not want to live under this Sharia dictatorship any longer. And eliminating their government, as I've said on your program before, this is the bank and the clearinghouse for terrorist operations all over the world. It's their proxies and everybody they fund, everybody from Hezbollah to Hamas to Islamic Jihad to the Houthis, even Al Qaeda is under their thumb. And if you eliminate the funding mechanism, a lot of this goes away. It will not eliminate all of it because there are wackos out there that believe this nonsense and
Yeah.
believe it is their godly duty to conquer the world for Islam. So it won't defeat all of it. I don't want to say that, but it will make things much, much easier. And it will add to stability in the Middle East. And I think it will lead to popular uprisings in other countries because at the end of the day, most people want freedom. They don't want their women or themselves to be oppressed. They don't want their women to have to wear, bed sheets outside all the time. They want to have the same things that you and I do. They want freedom. They want access to modern technologies. They want good food. They want stable jobs, stable economies. They want safety. And
Mhm.
I think this will lead to more of that spreading throughout the Middle East.
I agree. Now let's go into NATO because remember Trump saying way before this war ever started that he doesn't believe NATO would be there for us if we ever needed them. However, we give billions of dollars into this, this system. So what are your thoughts on NATO and their actions within this? Because for me personally, everything I've seen Trump said, he's like, tariffs. We got to go this route of tariffs. Why are we taxing our own people? Let's bring this in. There's so much
Yeah.
unfair tariffs. He starts to uncover stuff that I believe the average American had no idea about. Like, did we know? Did most Americans know that we were being taken advantage of? Right? Did we know that there was so much waste taking place at the government level? Did we know that our money was being sent to and I'm just giving this is I don't believe that this is the necessary program, but I'm just giving an example because it was bizarre and weird. But do we know that our taxpayer dollars are going to Pakistan to fund transgender rats? Do we know these things? And so he he's uncovering all of this stuff. And even when you bring it down to more of the individual level within our country, we talk about the physical presidential fitness test that was taken out of schools, and that allowed kids to be challenged and understand that they're all winners and losers, and you got to find your strength and you have to
Yeah.
achieve something. Does it feel like to achieve something? We're not all the same, and we're not all playing on the same, like a fair ground. Some people start in other places, and you just have to understand that you're going to have to compete, or so those are the things he's establishing and bringing back. And
Hmm.
then we see with, for example, with NATO, that we're doing this, and then he gets them to pay that 5%, which is great. But now he said that they want to show up after the war is over. They said that they want to help. So what are your thoughts on our allies?
Well, he's exactly right. Let's go through the tariffs and some of the other things real quick first. Like the tariffs, I think really did open up a lot of people's eyes on how our supposed allies were been taking advantage of us for years. Especially Canada. Look at these like 300 to 400% tariffs they had on a lot of our like dairy products, foods, things like that. And I can understand a certain level of protectionism for key industries within your country,
Yeah.
and because we would do the same thing. Um, but I mean, there's just again obscene and abusive, and same with a lot of other countries that were our supposed allies. They had 50, 30, 50, sometimes 70% tariffs on some products from the U.S. And we put a stop to the vast majority of that. Equalized trade should actually be equalized trade. If they're going to tariff us at a high percentage, then we should do it right back to them. Um, because again, we got to look out for our own self interest. We are not a
And protect
charity
our
for the
industries.
world.
Yes.
Now, NATO. I think the same thing. Like NATO, I'll be honest. I think this is a Cold War relic we no longer need anyway. But our again supposed allies have not been meeting their financial obligations for decades. This is not a
Mhm.
recent development. Instead, we've essentially financed their militaries in defense and allowed them to dump gazillions of dollars into their own social welfare programs and other things. But now we're wanting them to actually meet their obligations, and they still won't do it, some of them. Now, I know some of them did step up and do the 4 to 5% to make up the gap and then get back to their actual requirement of 2% of GDP spending on maintaining their military, maintaining a trained force. But, if this conflict's shown us anything, you know, they wouldn't even come down and help secure the Strait of Hormuz. The UK sent one boat and it had to turn around because it had water problems. It couldn't desalinate water for their crew. I mean, this is pathetic. And this is way more in their self-interest than ours. Germany's looking at $10 to $12 a gallon gas equivalent right now. I've heard as high as 16 for diesel in Austria and Germany. Record high prices, over $8 a gallon equivalent in the UK and France right now. And it's all because they won't help, and they're much more reliant on goods that flow through the Straits of Hormuz than we are. 1% goes to the United States. Most of this goes to Europe, Africa, and Asia. So it is really, again, it could go either way, and it really wouldn't affect us. And this is leading, and their inaction is now leading to further problems in Europe. They haven't gotten fertilizer in through the Middle East. It's all been stopped there, and now it's planting season. So they're going to have huge increasing food prices now, also because they're in action. And I saw yesterday, France and the UK and Italy now want to come in after the fact, essentially take credit for what Trump did and say they're going to help open the straits. And now we see today, and I can bring this up real quick, that already this ceasefire in the strait is essentially over. So this is Iran opens fire on tanker near Oman after reclosing the Straits of Hormuz. And then I just saw another headline right as you were going live that I guess we are now taking down a lot of the Iranian vessels. But it says, we will use force if necessary, but U.S. prepares to board Iranian-linked ships globally following Iranian gunboat attack on a tanker in Hormuz. Sorry, they had a spelling error there. But, this is going to... We're dealing with an adversary that we can't trust. It's a fractured government. They're not all communicating or on the same page anyway. Plus, again, it's a terrorist nation. They are going to do whatever they want, and some of these little jihadis are going to go out there and continue to attack us, even if the government tells them not to, because they're going to think Allah wills it. So, again, if we had the support from NATO, maybe these kind of things wouldn't be happening, or not in the scale that they are. And especially when they're so dependent on it, I just don't understand why they're absent. Like, this is much more in their self-interest than it is in ours. Our self-interest is eliminating the nuclear threat in the Iranian government. The Straits, well, it just doesn't matter to us all that much, to be blunt about it.
Yeah, and Trump is still looking out for them,
Yeah.
And here's my thing with when you look at Europe. They've been underneath our umbrella for so long, it seems, that they've not developed their military or defense capabilities. They, just rely on us for everything, but it's like, we want capable partners. Why would I want my friend to not be able to provide for herself, to defend herself? Why would I enable her like that? And, why would I not want her to be strong right alongside me so we be a force to be reckoned with? That is what I think Trump is wanting from our allies, and, to be able to step up and have that power to do so, and not be afraid to do so either, because he's a fierce leader. Now, when we look at Israel, that brings me into them, because I feel like, looking personally, when I look out at this alliance between Israel and the US and the friction we constantly see from the media, this has been our strongest consistent ally. And there with us together, and especially when we look at this war, when we look at the Hamas situation too, what took place there, that the 12-day war, we are a force to be reckoned with when Israel and the US is together. Like, the intelligence that's released, the accuracy, like, that's forced to be reckoned with. So the only conclusion I can come to as to why the media so attacks Israel and goes after, I get it. There's a whole thing about spending and all that. I would rather give money to Israel than, like I mentioned before, Pakistan over some rats.
Gender studies program or whatever.
Right. Right. So if this is going to be our consistent ally that provides us the intelligence we need, where we share defense weaponry and all that stuff, and they can hold their own weight, like, that is a force to be reckoned with. They're very strong in their own right. And of course they follow on Trump, but what I'm seeing here is this alliance is, again, I'll reiterate it, is extremely strong. And I feel like this is one of the reasons why they were trying to maybe separate us and want us to pull back into this isolationist type way of going, is what I think from the left. That's what it looks like to me. You let me know, but it just seems like they want us to be more like, you do that over there, but on the world stage, that looks like weakness. You're the only country that can actually step in to do something, and if you don't do that, I'm going to further my own interest. That's what China says. That's what Russia says. So we can't just sit back and not allow this stuff to happen, because not only does it affect these other countries, of course, but it affects us too.
No.
Like I mentioned with Taiwan, like our semiconductors are there, like we that's where we get our semiconductors from. So we can't
Yes.
just allow that to take place because of how it affects us. And yeah, I think this is a
Yeah.
very strong alliance. That's my theory as to why I feel the media attacks this relationship
Oh,
so much.
I think that is definitely the bulk of it. Now, that isn't to say there aren't occasionally some legitimate criticisms to things with Israel. And I do think some of the spending stuff, and you and I have talked about this before, you know, we don't have the money to be paying for like soccer stadiums and things like that in Israel. And that is unfortunately like some of the spending that goes on. I do think that's what I call an unforced error. It's a mistake it opens a path for criticism that could have simply been avoided, because again, we wouldn't do this for anybody else unless it was USAID funds being
Yeah.
misused or misappropriated.
Yeah.
So it's an unforced error. So I do think that is a legitimate criticism. Now the rest of it, though, no, they are largely in tune with us. We have similar goals. We both want regional stability there. We've obviously been working together on the Abraham Accords and eliminating the global threat from Islamic terrorism together. And I think we're largely in line there. Yeah, there's some friction here and there sometimes. And you do have some people within their government sometimes saying frankly stupid things that they shouldn't be saying, like because it gives the media fodder. When you have members of their parliament talking about the greater Israel movement and all this, it fuels the conspiracy theorists and all that. But other than that, yeah, we're largely in agreement. They are definitely our strongest ally in the region, especially considering like Saudi Arabia and a lot of these other countries. They kind of pretend to be our ally on
Yeah, you
paper,
can't trust them.
but
Right.
exactly. And and now there are some Islamic countries. I think Jordan largely, their government at least largely wants the same things. They want peace and stability in the region. But we got to focus on our friends. And again, Israel's been is there for us in the region. We've helped back them up plenty of times. They've helped back us up in this current conflict. And yeah, I do think the media wants friction. They want to destroy anything that Trump does. They have full blown stage 5 TDS. Doesn't matter what happens. There's always a negative spin that can be put on it. It'll be cast in the worst possible light, and they want things to fail. They
Hmm.
want high gas prices right now because I would get it if we were having the kind of gas prices that they are in Europe right now, where we were paying $12 a gallon for gas. I could totally understand the media going full bore on how horrible this is. But I mean, gas here where I live is about $3.20 a gallon. I think it's a little under that now. It's been a few days since I was paying attention. But when I filled up the last time, it was $3.19 is what I paid per gallon.
Hmm.
And that was last week. So yes, is that higher than things were? Yeah. Is it what we'd like? No. But it's not even as high as it was when Biden was in office just a few years ago. So,
Yeah.
it isn't this giant crisis like they're pretending, but they always
Yes.
dwell on the negative. They ignore the positive. And, that's really the media's stated purpose at this point.
Yeah, again, I mentioned this before as I was thinking through this conflict and how the media is portraying everything. It's like their top priority is go against Trump, tear down everything he does, versus they would rather prioritize that than say go after an Iranian regime like that has chanted death to America, death to its allies. They would rather paint the Iranian regime in a better light than say Trump. Like for
Yeah.
example, they're like, "Oh, the Iranian regime, they're winning, they're winning." It's like that's not even how.
Yeah.
How are they winning if we just destroy this many things? Like, how is that
It
possible?
remind It reminds me of Baghdad Bob. We were going into Iraq in the early 2000s, him saying, "Oh, the Americans are being slaughtered in droves," and all this, nonsense that wasn't true. Where you can
Mhm.
literally see American tanks rolling into Baghdad right behind him as we're overtaking the city. It's utter nonsense, but they cling on to it. I don't know why so many people are
Yeah.
just delusional right now or refuse to address reality. When I see these blue-haired moonbat wine moms out there talking about how great the Iranian regime is and how great it is for women and whatever. Like, again, nothing can be further from the truth. Women's testimony isn't taken seriously in court. It takes 4 women to counter one man in court. Like I said earlier, they force them to wear tents and bed sheets outside. They'll stone them to death. Potentially if their hair comes out from under their hijab. And look what sparked this whole thing a few years ago with Masa
Yeah.
Amini. That was
Yes.
an opportunity during that uprising, and we did nothing. The U.S. sat back while Biden was in office, asleep at the switch, and we let them slaughter 10,000 people then, too. They've already killed over 40,000, maybe as high as 80,000 in this current uprising. And again, the media tries to downplay that. I keep hearing them say, oh, it was still 30,000, but it's because they were protesting out in the street. Again, if this happened anywhere else, it'd be unacceptable. If
Right.
we turn the military on protesters here, it would be a constitutional crisis, as it should be. But
Yeah.
instead, they turn a blind eye.
Yep, and here's the thing, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because if we get into more of the nuances of that, because you see there's protests that happened for Hamas and when we had the whole 12-day war take place, but there was silence. We didn't see the same energy when all of these Iranian protesters were being slaughtered. We didn't see that at all. And
No.
then Trump comes on the scene and does something about it, and then there's attack on him, but it's like, look at none of you guys stood up for what took place there in the Iranian regime when they were slaughtering all these people, and it doesn't make any sense. It's like it's a double standard with the way that they run things or they do things on the left, and even with the media.
Yeah.
Again, their main it seems the main goal is whatever Trump does, oppose him, make it instead of making it look or seem like a win. And if it is a win, don't celebrate it. Don't bring much attention to it.
Orange
Just
man bad.
right. That's the main thing that we see with them. It's like it's just horrible. I even saw a reel where there was a guy that was going around talking to I think people in New York about what they thought about Hamas and the Iranian regime slaughtering these people, and then did they think that Hamas was correct in the way that they took hostages and how they handled that? And people are like, yeah, Hamas, they should not release those hostages. They should have killed them. They brought all these reasons as to why. And then the question was asked, so what do you think about the Iranian regime killing all these protesters? And they're like, what do you mean? Like how like and then the guy made a statement. He said they have killed almost as much protesters in just 3 weeks as Hamas as Israel did in the whole Gaza war. And
Mhm.
they're like, really? Like, yeah, so you didn't know about that reporting, right? And they're like, no.
Yeah, because it's
It's
basically
like,
non-existent.
yeah, yeah, this is stuff you have to actually go and look at because the media refuses to release it again just to push an agenda. And they're supposed to be reporting on this. This is what they're supposed to be bringing to the American people.
Well, again, this is one
Um,
of our country's core problems right now. You know, there are two problems. If we just had a magic one it could fix, it would probably solve 98% of the issues facing our country. We could restrain the government back under the Constitution and get them operating as they should. That would solve most of it. The other big problem is the media is just a propaganda arm. You know, Operation Mockingbird, in my opinion, never ended. This is uniparty, deep state messaging, and unfortunately, they still have near total control. And anytime you see anybody step outside of that, whether it's Fox News, and honestly, they're better than CNN, but they're still
yeah,
not
recently, yeah,
perfect.
they would,
Yeah.
yeah,
And CBS beginning to move that direction, at least with some of their programming. It is going to be a process. So, guys, we don't need to go after what's her name with both barrels yet. Give her a little bit of a chance to get things turned around over there. But we just need to get the media back to where they're just reporting the facts. We don't need it
yes,
filtered through their opinion constantly. It's okay to have some opinion discussions, but when it's all one way and it's dishonest, that's part of the problem. When
yeah.
their job is to misinform America rather than inform America.
Yeah, and I can't tell if this is more so a money thing because when Trump came on the scene, we found out that Politico was being funded too. If it's
Yeah.
if it's just that, or if it's also clicks, if it's oh, since we moved from this mainstream of watching cable to now just like YouTube and the social media and stuff, and maybe it's a combination of all of that, but it's like just they prioritize the clicks and the views and all that. And I understand that turns into income, but that's prioritized over principle and even over the good of an entire nation. And it's sick to watch. That's why I exist. That's why this channel exists. To
Well,
come
I think
against
it's
that.
even worse and more nefarious than that. That in a lot of ways they don't care about clicks or views, or they would be covering things more honestly. Like I think about how much of their audience they've lost, and we've talked about this before. Like since the last election, that
Mm,
CNN's had over a 40% decrease in viewers. I think MSNBC before they morphed into Miss Now was almost a 60% drop in viewership, and they do this to themselves by alienating more than half the country or more because they're so one side partisan, and they really do. I think it's more about messaging than anything else. They're used to having media dominance, and now that there are some alternatives, especially like programs like this and other conservative media, and now that things like YouTube allow anybody to become a reporter. I mean, look at Nick Shirley or Nick Sorter or
Yeah.
Savannah Hernandez. A lot of these people that are out there doing the work the mainstream media refuses to do, and they're angry about it, that they will go and investigate the Leering centers in Minnesota, or go to LA and find all this voter fraud, the hospice fraud and everything else, and expose it, because it makes the media look stupid. It makes it look like they're
Hmm.
not doing their job,
Yeah.
because they're not. They're covering up for the left, for the uniparty, for these undocumented Democrats on the right, too, because it is agenda driven. Yeah, I think part of it, you're right, is about clicks and driving that rage bait content to make people upset. But I think it's really more about political messaging than anything else. That they want to dominate the
Hmm.
culture and the narrative, and they're now struggling to do that.
Yeah. Thank God for Trump, because starting his own social media platform, like,
Yeah,
getting ahead of the media, being reporting himself. Not saying that he's like perfect, but that was brilliant.
yeah,
Now he was deplatformed and silenced and just went about it his own way. So,
yeah.
brilliant move.
Well, yeah,
Now,
I mean, I think real quick, and then but
go
I
ahead.
think really Elon Musk getting X has really been the biggest thing there. That this was
Yeah.
their platform before. This is where they threw off all the conservative voices, and now just opening that up and allowing exposure to alternative ideas, and not deplatforming or demonetizing or removing content that question some of the narrative. I think that's really been the biggest thing, because that exposes the normies in the middle, and it destroyed this leftist ecosystem of total dominance over social media.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for me to encourage you guys, if you have not subscribed already to our community where we go deeper into these issues, and bring on key people that can actually give us more insight and answer any questions, make sure you do that. So we have a community, it's called ACT, America's Call to Take Action. And in this community, guys, is almost like a book club. We're going to get together. We're discussing books. We're learning how to engage in an informed way and not just reactionary, so we can actually articulate what we're seeing taking place in culture. And this is what's going to help prepare us when we go before our city council, when we go before our school board, and to articulate things that are taking place, and to come into this arena with wisdom, and also with ability to make change, because we understand what's moving, and we can not just voice the problem, but actually come in with a solution. So this, we have to have that training though in order to do that. So if you feel ill-equipped at all in that area, I encourage you to join the subscription. We have I think that will be inside the show notes, or you should, if you're, depending on where you're watching from, you can come back to my Facebook, Aisha Speaks Truth, and you'll see the option for you to subscribe there, and you can become a part of that group. We meet every single month. And again, we're bringing in key people to come in and speak. The next time we're going to meet is going to be May 13th, and it's going to be 7 to 8 p.m. ET. We'll have Inez Cyrus. She's an Iranian expert. She's going to come in, and we're going to dissect more of her book. But this is teaching us from the perspective of what's taking place in the Middle East, so that way, again, we understand what's moving. We can articulate it. We can kind of put together our own theory on what's happening and understand what's happening on the world stage. And then from there, see what's happening even in our nation, not just, in a geopolitical sense, but individually as well. So if you have not already subscribed, I encourage you to do that and become a part of it. Also, with that, not only will you have access to key people that I'll be bringing in, but also we'll have discounted on merch and things that'll be dropping soon too. So make sure you become a part of that. I'd love to have you. And we meet on Zoom, so it's more of a closed setting, and you'll be able to talk with me. You'll be able to talk with the expert we have in the room with us, and I believe Mike will also be joining in the next one too. So make sure you hop in with us.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll be there. It's already on my calendar.
Yay. All right. So I did want to hit a little bit on the Strait of Hormuz. You kind of hit this already, because you talked about market fears, have, the media has been putting out this, this fear about what's taking place in crude oil. But we've already seen some reports of that even coming down. So
Oh
already,
yeah,
so 10, I
yeah. I
believe a
saw.
little over 10 days ago, there was like this scare that is keep going, it's going to go up, it's going to go up. And yes, we are experiencing a spike. Okay. I wouldn't say it's coming down now. So it's not as huge as they made it to be. But
Yeah, and I was just trying to find it. The number yesterday where crude went down to 80 something. I can't remember if
Was
it
it
was
eighty six
83 or
percent? I believe.
87. Was 86. Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to find it a minute ago, yesterday. Yeah, and then the markets went back up. Now I'm sure right now, right this second, because they did successfully, I guess, shut down part of the strait again with these
Yeah.
threats. And I don't understand how some of these ships are so skittish, but I guess, when you're carrying $1 gazillion of a flammable fuel with you, I guess I'd be scared about getting shot at too. But temporarily
Yeah.
traffic's been halted again, so I'm sure right now prices are probably spiking. But again, if we actually had NATO there doing their job, helping us, we probably wouldn't be having these problems. Um, but yeah, once again, they've of course broke the agreement that we just signed, and as you and I were discussing
Yeah.
off air and on, you can't trust the people in this regime. That's part of the problem.
No, they should have never had this much access to the strait. Like, and I get it, it's the region and where it's located, but to have our enemies, our adversaries have that much access, it's
Yeah.
it's insane. So I think Trump doing this right now is definitely necessary.
When
So
I
it can't
also
be
think part
hanging
of it.
over our heads. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you're fine. I saw a commentator, and I'm blanking on his name. It'll come to me here in a second. But I was watching this yesterday evening, and he kind of made a pretty good point. Is Iran hasn't done this before. They've never tried like shutting down the strait, because in previous years it wouldn't just be us in Israel and in some of the Gulf nations stepping up. If they had done something like this,
Yeah.
they would have had a bullseye on them, and the whole rest of the planet would have gone after them. So they knew not to do this. Whereas now, they think they can't. Well, they can short term. But there's going to be consequences for this. It sounds like we're already grabbing a bunch of their boats. We've made it clear if they resist, we'll fire. We're going after, I guess, the rest of their mine laying vessels right now too. I'm
Hmm.
looking at more updates as they come in. Um, the ship that attacked the tanker, they've already gone after it. There's going to be consequences, but once again, if NATO or even other Gulf states or whoever were willing to actually help us more than they are, and again, it's more in their interest than ours, we wouldn't be in this situation. But it really is like the media and a lot of people are cheering for defeat. I do think part of it in Europe is also due to the Islamification that we've seen there. That
Yeah.
if the UK or France or Germany or a lot of other countries were seen to be helping us destroy the poor regime in Iran, or even just stand against them, that they'd be dealing with riots in their own country, because they've left their borders open and they've been invaded by Islamic boat migrants and people from Syria for the last decade.
Yeah. I mean, exactly, with their open borders, policies.
Well,
This has been the issue, and
yeah.
I think strategic positioning. We do have that in the Trump administration. So I'm going to move us into this one. What Pete Hegseth recently just said. So he said this: we can see the new Iranian regime digging out their remaining launchers and missiles with no ability to replace them. In the famous
Hmm.
words of DJT, "You don't hold the cards." He said, "We are watching you as you expose yourself with your movement to our watchful eye." Quote,
Yeah.
"We are locked and loaded on your critical use infrastructure, on your remaining power generation, on your energy industry." So to me, it seems like this whole Strait of Hormuz thing is kind of their last resort right now because of all of the destruction that we have
Yeah.
created for them. So it's like a way for them to hold on to some sense of power and to kind of control the narrative. There was even a report. I didn't pull this up, guys, but maybe I'll post it later if somebody comments in the chat and wants to see this. But I remember seeing a report that there were Iranian accounts that were started during this war, where there was a spike in basically them posting and having different, like 60 to 100 different accounts posting about this war and kind of smearing Donald Trump and just saying things that the media and commentators that are on the left can run with, and to kind of just change the narrative. So you even see that they're trying to even play a hand in that arena where they're trying to shape our narrative here to get people to side with them, or to have something else against Trump, or to even take the focus off of a certain area like this whole war, and put it on their agenda. So you even see that take place
Yeah.
here, and in our nation, the fact that they can do that,
Yeah.
and
They
platforms don't take it down.
Well, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And then the media here, it elevates and boosts these botted or, pro regime accounts. And then they ignore the voices of the Iranian people who are, literally asking us to come back in and just finish them off, that they just want their freedom. And they actually have
Mhm.
started acting in the streets in places, not in mass yet, but you're going to see more and more of it. But there are videos starting to pop up that the regime is so weak that even though unfortunately, a lot of the weapons that we tried to send in through the Kurds, unfortunately, were stolen, about 90% of them. But, 10% made it in. There were other stockpiles. We know that there are, we suspect there are hidden arsenals in there, but they're starting to take down these Basiji and IRGC checkpoints. I saw a video the other day of basically a drive-by where they get rid of one of these checkpoints in Tehran and took out what was left of the IRGC there. The people want their freedom. But yes, we're going to
Yeah.
continue to see the media here hold up these they want to create sympathy for the Islamic regime, which I just don't understand. It should be self-evident that it is not just in I mean, it's in our interest regardless. I mean, even if we just ignore the Iranian people and say, yeah, forget them, whatever happens, who cares? It's in the U.S. interest. This gets rid of, again, the
Yes.
main state sponsor of terrorism, a country that's been our adversary for 49 years, going all the way back to the Islamic Revolution in 1979. And it also harms our other adversary, China. They get somewhere between 20 and 25% of their fuel from the Iranian regime. And losing that supply has already caused economic troubles within their country. A lot of plastics manufacturers and others have had to shut down. And they've even had to stop doing flyovers in Taiwan because they literally don't have enough gas to keep fueling their airplanes.
Hmm. Now let's talk about where we are right now with this situation. So I know that we had that, the ceasefire kind of bring us up to speed, ceasefire, and then we had the talks on the Strait of Hormuz being open, and you just mentioned that is, close again, and I believe it was in a boat from India, if I'm not
Yeah, I think
mistaken.
so.
That was
Yeah, yeah, I think it was an Indian tanker. I can double check that real quick, but I'm about 99% sure it was an Indian tanker that they attacked this time.
okay. Yeah, so then that's happening. Lebanon is supposedly not supposed to be part of the ceasefire deal, but then Trump also, I believe, he posted something about that, saying that he asked Israel to stop uh, bombing the Hezbollah. So, so I guess, where do you, after you look this up and we get the clarification on that tanker?
It was an Indian tanker, and India, I guess, is throwing out the Iranian ambassador in their country now.
Okay, well, what do you see this going from here? What do you think the Trump administration is going to do?
Well, we will probably give them another chance before we retaliate, but if it were up to me, I would already consider this. They've already violated the agreement, and even with the last ceasefire, Iran did launch attacks after the deadline. I mean, and I know they said, well, Israel did too, and that is true. They did 15 minutes after the ceasefire started. They bombed a target, and then they stopped. Iran fired missiles just after, so they both did it. But anyway, I kind of feel like, when you draw a line in the sand, there has to be consequences. That's one of the things, Obama's red line basically became a joke in Syria because he kept moving that red line every time they
Mhm.
violated it. So we can't be doing the same thing. This isn't a tiny incident with, one person going out with an AK and shooting at a tanker. And then Iran's government says, sorry, we didn't order that. That was him. That was Mohammed. He did that on his own. We're sorry. This was an orchestrated attack on a civilian oil tanker from India, who, by the way, is not even involved in this conflict in any way, other than they'd like to get their oil they purchase through the straits like they normally do.
Yeah.
So I think there have to be consequences. You mentioned that quote from Hegseth that we've been watching them. Our eye in the sky has been seeing where they're digging up launchers and missiles out buried in the desert
Because
and
that's
other
their last
drones.
defense.
Yep.
They got to
You know
dig up
what?
what they buried.
How about a 12-hour strike window? We go hit all those targets. We can ignore their infrastructure and other things for now. Maybe we've got some more leadership targets to hit, but we just remind them of what can happen if we have to go back to a 24/7 bombing campaign once again. Give them a little reminder, and then as long as the straits are open again in 12 hours and they haven't done anything else or attacked other civilian vessels, we can go back to we can try to reignite a ceasefire.
Now, there was a clip, I believe, that we have. I'm not sure Well, there's a clip that we have of Trump addressing the media about the 4 protesters that Iran said that they were going to execute.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 1 second. Let me pull that up.
Let's
Here
see if
we
we
go.
have.
Four more people, including a woman. The Federal Reserve should wait and see about this Iran war before lowering interest rates. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree. I think we should have lower interest rates.
Iran's going to execute 4 more protesters, reportedly, including the first woman protester. What do you tell Iran?
Well, tell that to the Pope. What do you say? Tell that to the Pope.
You want to patch things up with the Pope?
That Iran is going to. Did you just hear that? Iran is going to execute 4 people, including a woman?
Trump, the Lebanese love you so much. Will you visit Lebanon? You extend the ceasefire? What makes you extend that?
I don't know if we're going to have to, but if we need to, I would do that.
Wait, that's important. Sorry.
What are you telling the airlines and the oil companies about the ways you're going to open up the trade?
So if you look at the oil and if you look at the price we're paying, it's about half what people thought it would be if you did what I had to do. We had to take this journey to the Middle East in order to get rid of a nuclear weapon. There would have been, if we didn't hit it with the B-2 bombers, or if I didn't kill the Barack Hussein-Obama deal, the nuclear deal, which was a disaster, we would have had nuclear weapons exploding in the Middle East and beyond. I believe I've been able to stop that. I think we have a very successful negotiation going on right now, and I think it'll be, if it happens, it'll be announced fairly soon, and that'll give us free oil, free Hormuz Strait, everything will be nice, and I think your oil price will go down to lower than what it was before, and I think a lot of good things will happen.
Now that video was, I think, a day or so ago, guys. That was released. But what I wanted to play was definitely the part about, because him and the Pope have kind of been going back and forth. I do like that Trump has been respectful in doing so, because he can be extremely blunt and just speak his mind. But I think he's been doing that in a more cordial way. I do agree with him when he says, because the Pope's saying no war, but it's like you have to see what's actually taking place. And in another instance, he said, as a president of the United States, I love the gospel. I want the Pope to speak the gospel, but he's like, as a president of the United States, I can't allow this stuff to happen. And it's,
Yeah.
It's the truth.
This Pope is such an embarrassment, especially the fact that he's from Chicago. He's an American. I was born and raised Catholic. So, but I mean, unfortunately, the Catholic Church has been corrupted really since Ratzinger, since following Pope John Paul. I think Pope John Paul understood, he fought against communism. He was instrumental in the freedom of Poland. He stood up against dictators in South America. But they've lost their will to fight. And now they've essentially adopted this leftism policy. Like, yeah, they haven't gone like full blown blue-haired moonbat yet, but they're still pretty close. And even the Pope, this speech that he gave, and I wish I would have grabbed an image to bring up regarding this, where he defended Islam, said we can learn from them and all this, but he totally ignores the slaughter of Christians in Africa, including in Algiers, where he was at, where they had just slaughtered a number of Christians in a church, I believe a week to 10 days right before that. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact date. But that's all left out of the conversation. Not to mention this Sermon on the Mount misquote, where he threw all that in. Where he forgot to include Trump in it, but he basically presented it as if this is what the Bible said about leaving politics and whatever. That is not. That doesn't appear there anywhere. And again, a lot of the messaging is incorrect too. We have to have morals. We have to have a stand. And sometimes when you're dealing with dictators and abusers like this, you have to respond with violence. And again, we can look to the Bible for this too. There's plenty of times where God instructed the Israelites or whoever to smite their enemies. And again, you can try to work with people to a certain extent, but when you're slaughtering protesters or going to execute these 4 young women, which I believe the main one was already executed yesterday. It might be all 4. Sorry, I meant to look for that a second ago. That's intolerable. And I don't know why the Catholic Church has embraced leftism. I don't know if it's the $4+ billion they were given during the Biden years to bus illegal aliens all over the U.S. and house them, like here in Cincinnati and other places. But I don't understand it. I wish the Catholic Church would get back to fighting for freedom here and around the world. Another thing I don't understand, and it isn't just the Catholic Church at this point, it's a lot of other denominations too, is, they'll go out and they'll defend Islam rather than trying to save their souls and preach the gospel. Now, again, like I don't think we need to be hostile to every imam or whatever here. You can have some sort of, I don't even want to use dialogue because interfaith dialogue is another corrupted thing, but uh, a cordial relationship. We don't have to be actively hostile all the time, but I don't know. I kind of feel like it's something worth fighting for. And when
Yeah.
he ignores the atrocities, the slaughters, and everything else, and I don't know if it's guilt from the Crusades or what it is, but there shouldn't be any guilt there either. I mean, the Crusades were necessary when they happened, and this is because Islam took over the Middle East. They took over Israel. They slaughtered most of the Jews that were down there. And when they started attacking Christian pilgrims that were coming down from Europe and other places, that's when the Catholic Church got involved because they were a dominating force at the time. And they began protecting people on their path down, and then they liberated the area multiple times from the Islamic hordes. So I don't know what the problem is. I wish they could find their fortitude once again and actually take a moral stand, because that's what people are hungry for. When you look at the
Yeah.
churches that are growing right now, even amongst the Catholic Church, it isn't the mainstream. It's the more traditionalist sects under it's the Eastern Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox, the Orthodox Church that still cares about things, still has principles, and is not going to just cave to modernity. And those are the churches, both Catholic and non-denominational and Protestant churches. Like those are the ones that are growing right now, are the ones that actually care about the truth in the Bible and aren't going to bend to make people, mentally ill people, feel good about themselves today.
Agreed. Now, not only has Trump been, fighting these wars and putting out these wars and dealing with these conflict overseas, but then, I've been watching this whole, and not necessarily closely, but the whole thing with Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, and Candace Owens, and also I guess the Pope as well. But what I remember thinking when Tucker Carlson went to the White House and spoke with JD Vance. This was before this Iran war started, and I thought, like, does Donald Trump not know what this guy is saying about him, about the administration? And I'm not to say that Tucker Carlson hasn't done some good things, but right now something's off. I don't know. And I remember, I'm not saying that he is. I want to be careful, but I wonder if he's doing something that, like, I remember they said that he had struggled with cocaine at one point. I don't know if there's something's wrong. And we I love that Donald Trump is a man that can see that's dealing with the entire world, but at the same time can bring it down to an individual level. He's observant, because at one point I was like, I wonder if he knows what's taking place. The only thing I can do is pray for him, because it doesn't seem like Tucker Carlson has his best interest at heart. But all I can do is pray. And I remember him saying he knew that Tucker Carlson was never MAGA first. I was like, thank God for President Trump. Thank God he is seeing everything that's taking place with these commentators who have these big platforms, who once supported him, and then all of a sudden are flipping for one reason or the other. And of course, like he mentioned with the Pope, we can have that disagreement. That's totally fine, but be fair. And so, you know, I'm just glad that he can see who's for him and who's not. And I know that that's not always easy to see, but this
Well,
it's gone past just the Pope or whatever. You talk about MTG and these
yeah.
conservative commentators.
Well, I do think this is one misstep Trump's made, going after some of the people he has. Like I can understand the ones like obviously Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson, and some of the people where he's had big disagreements with, but going after other people for simple criticisms, like even Benny Johnson and some of the others that he's attacked more recently, I think it's uncalled for, and I don't think
Mm.
it's a good look, and it certainly doesn't help us in these midterms, because you can't go after everybody that won't just move in lockstep, especially when some of the times they do have legitimate criticisms. Um, whether that's the Epstein files and lack of prosecutions there, or lack of arrests and all that kind of stuff, when they bring that up and you attack them for it, it doesn't help us, because that's what a lot of the base, especially younger people, are very upset about. And that's, Trump's one big failure in this last year is lack of prosecutions. And, I can understand, again, going after the ones that have become consistent enemies. But you can't just go after people that criticize something. That's not good. Especially when, again, Benny Johnson, most of these people are very loyal, but sometimes there are things to criticize or to at least question.
Yeah.
So I do think that needs to get toned down, or, you want to talk about like leaving yourself on an island. That's what'll happen, because they have a huge fan base. We got to remember, it isn't just the mega base that got Trump across the finish line. They called him the podcast president early in his term for a reason. We brought in a lot of new voters and a lot of new people to this movement, and a lot of them, these are the kind of issues that brought them to the table. So when people question, like, why hasn't something been done about this, and then you yell at them and say, "Oh, you're not mega. You were never this, never that." That's we're already suffering in the midterms right now. We've had very
But
low
if you
voter
look at
turnout.
polling, his favorability is still pretty high
Yeah,
for
but
the
his doesn't
Republican
matter.
side.
But if you have people just not showing up at the polls, it only takes 3 to 5%. All of a sudden, we can't win anything, and that's what we've really got to pay attention to. A lot of these races were very, very close in the states, and if you have people that are not inspired, because honestly, Congress has let us down over and over again. Like, there's a story that just broke today with John Thune. Apparently, part of, though they're now alleging, and I guess I'll have to read more of it, but why we haven't seen Brennan's indictment come down, we're talking about that again yesterday for the 5th time, is because the Senate hasn't been cooperating, delivering testimony to the grand jury that they were supposed to 2 months ago. So it's hard to talk people into going out and voting for a lot of these losers in Congress that have sat on their hands for the last 2 year or year and a half.
Yeah.
And we have to have them, or the agenda is going to get just stalled. So they do need to be a little smarter with messaging there. And I think attacking
Yes,
somebody,
I think it's messaging, definitely.
but yeah, attacking somebody for a legitimate criticism or asking questions like, where are the arrests now? Why is this the 15th time we've heard about Ilhan Omar marrying her brother? Why is this the 5th time we've had the DOJ talking about arresting Brennan and it still hasn't happened? When you start going after people for those kind of criticisms, that's a problem, because again, this is self-evident. This isn't like
Yeah.
they're just nagging about it constantly. We're almost 15 months in and nothing's happened.
I do think, though, that he has a point where the Democrat was using that. Of course, they're going to use anything they can find to,
Yeah.
aid their cause. I think he
But
had a
whose
point in
fault is
saying that.
that?
Well,
You know,
you see him make that shift, though, right? So Pam Bondi is no longer the, head of the DOJ. She's no longer there. So we have someone else. So I think these shifts kind of reveal what's actually taking place in the administration, is that he can definitely see that this is something we're unhappy about, and he's making the
yeah.
shifts accordingly. So that's my analysis.
Yeah, and that could be. I just feel like if that's what it was, Bondi would have been out much earlier. When she was promising results in June or July and didn't deliver, then by August she should have been out of there, and somebody should have been in there to do something. Maybe I'm a little stricter, but I still think like the criticisms are legitimate. And of course, the Democrats are going to weaponize that too, because we would do the same thing if the situation were reversed.
Yeah.
So pretending that somehow it's that the critics being weaponized by the Democrats, that it's their fault, I don't buy that, because again, when the situation's reversed, we would do exactly the same thing. So I don't buy it.
Okay, I'm gonna agree with you in there. And I also think that with the Democrats, one of the things that I think we're going at with the Epstein file is Trump is implicated, especially after what Elon Musk had dropped on his X account
Yeah.
after they had the whole falling out. So, for him saying this is this is kind of a Democrat hoax to go after this. Yeah, I can see
I,
the messaging there, definitely, because people want to know there should be justice for the women that were involved. We should be prosecuting the people that were involved. Pam Bondi delayed hugely on this issue and messed up a lot. I do see the point there. Point
And
taken.
actually, I think I have a better way to articulate this. The Democrats doing the right thing for the wrong reasons doesn't detract from it being the right thing to do. What I mean by that is a lot of, I know that they're only bringing up this Epstein stuff because they think it helps them politically, but it's still the right move. So even though they're doing the right thing for the wrong reasons, it's still the right thing. So going after somebody, that co-sponsored this bill for disclosing all the documents because they co-sponsored with the Democrat, invalid. It's still the right move to make. And even if they are trying to weaponize it, and I don't think that 100% of the Democrat, I think most of them are doing it for the wrong reasons. There are a few that I do think that have brought this up before and are genuinely concerned. Again, it's very few, but it doesn't detract. It's still the right thing to do when you attack the messenger that says, hey, and let's not forget, This bill through the House to disclose the Epstein documents, Trump signed it into law. He knows exactly what's in there. This isn't like they just pulled something and they're trying to force the DOJ to do something. We agreed to their terms. So the fact that it
Yeah.
still hasn't been done, we're now 2, 3, 4,
But even the
five.
stuff that was released, I think also the criticism with Pam Bondi was the fact that when she released it, it seemed to not have been she was supposed to, I guess they said that the reason why she delayed was because they were supposed to redact some of the victims' name. They were supposed to take out their, like, even victims' credit cards and informations were also posted that shouldn't have been posted.
Yeah.
So that's a huge
Well,
mistake.
Well, yeah, and all the other unnecessary redactions. That's the biggest part. Is I think I brought this up in your program before. One of these, internet attorneys, former prosecutor, like he brought up a number of these emails that had financial crimes in them. Like we would know exactly who to charge and exactly what was going on if only Pam Bondi had followed the law and not redacted all this other information. The only thing that was supposed to be redacted in these emails was victims' names and identifying information. That's what the law states. That's what Trump signed into law, but that is not what the DOJ has done. So getting upset about the possibility of accountability, and I saw they're going after Comer now because of this hearing next week that Bondi has to attend, and they're talking about possibly charging her, holding her in contempt of Congress. Which again, I don't know that that's going to happen. But again, like we agreed to these terms. There's no good explanation for these redactions, and the federal government's still sitting on 3.2 million documents that they are bound by law to release. And the fact that you once again had Todd Blanche less than a week ago out there saying, "Oh, we don't have any crimes, we can't find anything, nobody's going to get charged." America just doesn't buy it. And the fact that again that we're now 5 months out of compliance with this law, it's an unforced error. Just
Yeah,
do your job. That's the bottom line.
agreed. I think we need to pray that the right people get into these positions
Yes.
as well, so that we can have justice. And again, that's one of the things that we voted him on, was to go after the deep state, was to uncover these things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. Well, we are nearing the end, guys. I just want to remind you again, if you want to a deeper breakdown like this, where we're not just reacting, but actually thinking through what's happening, this is exactly what we do in the subscription. So again, the next meeting we'll have is May 13th, 7 to 8 p.m. ET. If you are not already subscribed, make sure that you do so. That, again, that'll be in the show notes, and also you can find it on the Facebook page if you are on Facebook. That's the main place. And we will be doing an in-person Zoom meeting. So you can hop in camera on or not. It doesn't matter, but you'll have access to the people that I have access to, so we can dissect things together and ask any questions that you have in regard to the topic. So definitely make sure you hop in. I'd love to see you there. And we'll be live again next week, Saturday, 2 to 3 p.m. ET. So you can hop in as well. I do want to thank you guys so much for being with me. Mike, always amazing to have your commentary. I love having you on. Your perspective and commentary and your insights is key. So thank you so much for your time
Well,
today.
thank you for having me once again, and I'm always happy to be here.
Okay. Well, guys, I hope you guys have a great rest of your Saturday. And until next time, make sure you stay alert, stay aware, and stay in